I actually shaved.
Perfect.
Like my beard was pound. So it's like, okay, let me shave.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and start now that we're live and we're recording. So first of all, I want to thank everyone and welcome everyone to the Pop Climate Leadership Conversations, a tribute to our chief mentor. This project aims to strengthen youth leadership and explore tactics that empower the youth to take action to tackle the most pressing environmental issues faced globally. We are conducting this series of conversations on leadership strategies, recommendations, reflections, and examples, each focused on global leadership and a different pressing environmental issue. This initiative is designed and implemented as a tribute to our chief mentor, later Dr. I.K. Pachari. And today we have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Tarek Rashed about leadership and technology. Dr. Tarek Rashed is the Chief Technological Officer of Covilizology LLC and a board member of the Civilizations Rights Institute. Dr. Rashed has over 55 projects in over 50 countries worldwide, focusing on geospatial technology, digitalization, e-government, vulnerability mapping, and disaster risk assessment. Tarek has taught us at several prestigious universities, including Indiana University, the University of Oklahoma, University of Redlands, the University of Southern California, and Amrita University. He holds a Ph.D. in geography, a master's degree in computation and disaster risk management, and a bachelor in science in architecture engineering. We are very excited for this conversation today. Thank you, Dr. Tarek, for joining us. And first, I would like to start off the conversation by kindly asking you what leadership means to you.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, Anna, and for the rest of the POP family. I consider myself part of the POP family, even though it has been a few months only since we got in touch together, but I think we have had joint events, lots of interaction. I'm very inspired by your the legacy of Dr. Bachori, and of course by my friend Ash and Dr. Suraj. So basically the entire, and of course all of you, I interacted very closely with two of you, Durisha and Kamal, during the C20 event, and all I had not personal, but I said basically like interaction with Ivan when we tried to organize together the joint event that we had for the C20 as well. So I have seen nothing but very impressible and basically very amazing work team, interesting together to work in really changing the world, and really I'm very honored to be with you here today. So thank you for that. Let me start with this leadership question, because I think it was something that I've been thinking of for a while, because there is different styles of leadership. And I'm not sure if I consider myself really a leader or not. I certainly have been leading lots of teams and projects all over the world. But I think one thing that has been for me most critical is what they call transformational leadership. And by transformation, not like I'm trying to change the people or change the way they think, but just try to make an impact and try to change a situation on the ground. And whoever works with me toward this, that becomes an important element in this. So part of the leadership for me is to make sure that all the team members who are working with us, believe in this cause, that whatever cause we are after, not only just a matter of doing the job and leave. So for example, I just give you an example happening at this moment. We are doing a project in Malawi for disaster risk management. So I'm leading a team that's consisting of about 25 different experts. All of them are PhDs from Denmark, from Portugal, from US, from Kenya, from Malawi itself, and from India. And what we are trying to do is basically, just trying to create a risk strategy for the city of Tare in Malawi to make it resilient for disaster risks until 2030 and behind. And Malawi is actually one of the countries that really does not have any risk management infrastructure. I'm not sure if you follow the news, but last March, they have been impacted very, very badly by Cyclone Freddy, and they have over 70,000 families displaced, and they have been really severely impacted by that. So one of the things is not really with the team, just trying to, a lot of people, especially in the consulting business or international consulting, people get to do you assign for them like a small task, like come do flood modeling or earthquake modeling, or somebody comes to some sort of surveying, they do their task and leave. And just, you know, you are the one who's supposed to bring all the pieces of the puzzle together as a team leader and present the strategy. But I try from the beginning that, you know, we are not here just to do just basically the typical consulting business, just, you know, produce a report, but we're trying to make an impact. An impact means how, you know, how we are leaving a legacy, how after the project, and most of the consultant project, based on my experience, they don't actually, they always say pilot never fail because they are never scale. And the problem here is just, you know, most of the time when the fund rise up, there is no follow-up. So basically they go back to corner zero. So how we make sure there is consistency, there is continuation, there is sort of lasting impact or durability for our results. So this is what I call a transformational leadership, just trying to sell the cause for the team members and then gives them the autonomy of how the best to do this as far as we are aligning our goals together. So for me, transformational leadership is more kind of, cause-oriented, when something like what you have for the POP, for the, for the POP movement, or what we have in the Civilization Rights Institute, we have a cause. At the end, we need to make a change. And with this cause in our goal, toward this goal, how we can basically make the people do their own work, gives them the creativity, gives them autonomy to do their work as far as it's aligned together and reaching this. And this is for me what leadership matters at the end of the day.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tarek. I really liked your answer because I think you really touched on examples from your different experiences, and it's great to hear about how your experience in your projects has really led you to understand leadership from different points of view. Now I would like to hand it over to Ivan.
Thank you so much, Anna. And it's a pleasure to be here with you, Dr. Tarek. I wanted to ask, what is the potential that technology has to solve environmental and social crises? And how can we ensure that this potential is used?
Well, the technology, I think there's so much, I think it depends on how you define the technology in the first place. There's so many technology here. Are we talking about engineering technology or about IT technology, generic or specialized families of IT technology, like in my case, GIS and remote sensing? So I'll talk about a little bit GIS remote sensing because this is the area. And technology is like anything. It has basically it's kind of like a double sword effect. So it can basically, make our life much easier, but also it can be misled if not implemented in a proper way. So for example, when we come in GIS is about digital maps. So basically, for example, we all use Google Map at one point, and this is one example of what GIS can do, take you from one place to another. But imagine if you have a map with wrong direction, wrong street, you end up like sometimes in the nowhere. So this example of the technology, the idea is, and we end up depending on the technology too much that sometimes we don't follow direction anymore. And sometimes Google can tell you, you can see with your eyes that you arrive to your place, but Google say, drive extra mile, and you start to drive extra mile and actually believes the technology on the expense of your own, your own eyes, because this is what the technology does. So I think that the main thing in the technology, it can make a huge impact. For example, starting a new project with the FAO on Smart Village. And the whole idea is to provide farmers in about 1,000 villages across Asia to access the market, allow people, for example, in Samoa, selling vanilla to people in Canada. This would have been achievable, maybe 15 years ago, but being able to use even Facebook as a sort of Amazon.com or marketplace where they can advertise their vanilla products, and then somebody interested in Canada, they can actually go ahead and just send in the payment. So this is all enabled by the technology. So it can be amazing in helping societies moving on. But the main thing is just have to be, also we have the scamming, we have hacking, we have the wrong implementation of the technology. So I think the idea here is the obvious answer. Just use the technology with cautious, because it is important, because without the technology there's a lot of things we cannot do, but also make sure that understand how this technology is implemented and the drawback of the technology. So I go again to the GIS part here. So one of the areas that we have been using a lot recently and has been proven to be of great impact in terms of climate change, in terms of sustainability. It's something called precision farming. What is precision farming is using satellite data with a lot of information related to soil, related to meteorology, related to weather forecasting. So instead of doing the traditional farming practicing where you can actually spread all your chemicals across the field or the watering all the field and wasting lots of water or extra chemical, it allows you to know on precise pixel. We call the pixel could be 5 meters by 5 meters. So basically splitting your field into small grids with small squares. And then the tractor or the farmer, based on the information, can actually cultivate each field, customize the organic or fertilizers or the water based on this particular need. It helps a lot when you have a large farm where you have a lot of variation in the water supply or in the soil quality, and that allows you to save in terms of economic. So it has very nice economic impact, but also saving the water, provide better yield because you kind of like customize the treatment and the soiling and the farming or cropping activities per, split across your farm. So this is a great example of how it can be helpful for a lot of farmers. The main problem is challenging because, again, if you provide them the wrong weather information or the wrong, then it will have the double effect. So it's kind of like, again, technology has a great societal impact, as everybody knows, but also I think the cautious here, how it can be implemented in a proper way. And sometimes, for me, it is technology. This is why I think when I worked with the UNDP last year, we created something called digital maturity. Again, I'm focused only on the digital technology here, or especially GIS. The idea is technology is like a ladder. You have to climb it step by step. Sometimes people think that we can start from where the people ended. And sometimes it is very hard because, going from ground zero to the fifth floor in one leap or one jump may have some sort of impact. So, for example, if we need to implement a proper disaster response or a proper, hurricane or cyclone, early warning system. So yes, you can have the best technology and you can implement, all the kind of like antenna, internet, and all the sensors. But at the end of the day, if the people in the ground, in the village, don't understand the meaning of the alarm, when they get this amber alarm on their phone, basically it's totally useless. So sometimes the technology has to be matched with some sort of like educational, most of the time, actually all the time, have some sort of like soft implementation where people understand the technology. And this is one of the things when it happened, because I work in a lot of digital transformational projects, and you have, for example, fund from the World Bank, $100 million, people implement the technology, and then you ask them how much this has changed the impact, how much impact it has on the people. For example, this early warning system, how many lives it has saved, and people don't have answer because they are excited about the technological aspect of this, but when it comes to the societal aspect, people understanding how to use the technology, people are able to, understand the drawback of the technology, they are not able to justify this. So I think for me, technology implementation is almost like climbing a ladder. You have to take it step by step. You have to put the infrastructure, parallel this educational program for decision makers to understand the implication of the technology, how it can be used, and then the society, and then take it to the next step and so on. This is why we call it mature. It has to be maturing kind of like gradual pace rather than just try to, go from 0 to 100 in one single jump. It happens, but later on it has a drawback and usually fails.
If I may add, because I'm really curious, how would you couple this like technology implementation with the traditional knowledge of indigenous peoples as they used to work or to farm in this case in one way? And how, when it changes and technology is put in there, is there any conflict, or is it like a positive thing for their culture or the way to?
Most of the time, actually, they can work together. Like we just published, actually, there is a conference coming in Thailand this month, and we have a paper in this conference in IEEE where we talk about the using of seasonal calendar, digitizing this seasonal calendar for indigenous communities or for some tribal in India. I know that, for trying to capture their indigenous knowledge, the seasonality of the different kind of impact, but put it in a digital one. They have been doing this for years, but you do this on a kind of like board or sometime in their heads. You don't actually put in digitization. But the idea is just when you digitize, so it is basically their traditional knowledge, but just putting in a digital, environment, and then start to actually integrate this with other data related to what we know about weather forecast thing, and just try to amend this and giving back to them in a way that they can understand and provide alerts. There is actually one wonderful example from India that I learned actually a few years ago, that the kind of like the cycle of the cow. So, actually later on they have a very nice application now called the Moo Farm, and actually it has been very nice. But the point is, there has been most of the farmers, they keep the track of the cow because they want to make sure when the cow will be milked, and then at one point the cow has to be sort of like fertilized in order to maintain the milk and so on. But most of the farmers, they have this in their head that sometimes if you have 5 or 6 cows, or have 15 cows, it's very hard to keep track of all of them. So the guy started with a very simple thing, try to understand basically, what is the cycle of each cow, and sending them SMS alert when it has to do some action related to the cow to make sure that the milk is going and there is no drop in the milking process. And it started by something like that, and it has been very, very successful because a lot of farmers enjoy this, because it's kind of like providing them a sort of reminder for certain things that sometimes they mess up, and that implies sort of loss of income. Over time, they became the farmers themselves embrace the technologies. They learned actually how to use this technology with SMS. But later on, there was another problem. The problem is a lot of farmers, insurance companies in India, they don't insure cows because they were worried about sort of kind of like cheating. People will not report this is right cow. So basically, like, how I know that this cow is the one that was insured. So they added something with smartphone that the kind of like, biometrics for the cows. So the cows, exactly like us, have very unique shapes. So each cow is very unique. And that were actually, providing incentivization for farmers to take picture of their cow, that actually encouraged insurance companies now, because now they can actually insure the cow and know that this is the cow is reported. So again, you can see basically how the dynamics. So now basically the farmer, they actually get reminder of their milk, based on the food, wherever you the cow, they actually get better marketing. And then finally, they also get insurance for their cow that before that was not affordable for them. So it's starting with understanding just the life cycle or that monthly cycle of the cow, later on to kind of creating an ecosystem to support farming and support farmer and better for both things. So the idea going back for the indigenous knowledge, it's not really, it can be integrated. And the paper I was mentioning before that we wrote about seasonal calendar, what we discovered that each, remote, there's some sort of semantics. So for example, when we talk about a disaster, one community think of disaster in a certain way, the meaning of disaster is different for another community. So when they share the traditional knowledge, there is almost a need for translation between one community and another community, because they talk about the same thing but use different terms. So with this seasonal calendar, we started actually coming with something what we call it indigenous knowledge translator. So we can translate what group of people think about it, which is other group of people think, but they use different term, and being able to do this. And that would allow actually ultimately transfer indigenous knowledge from one group to another or learn from each other. So this is an example of something that we couldn't have been able, we wouldn't capture earlier unless we have the technology and start seeing, they're talking about the same thing, but just use the term different knowledge terms. And this happened with AI, with machine learning, thing like that. So I'm pro technology. So you expect me, I would never say technology is bad, but I always warn about technology.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tarek. That's really interesting, and congratulations on the amazing work you have done and how you have really used technology to bridge gaps and have help people have access to additional information. I will now like to hand it over to Drisha, who will be asking the next question.
Don't degrade me, Drisha.
Thank you so much, Anna. And it's so nice to see you, Dr. Tarek, and listen to you. All that you have to talk about technology. I mean, we saw your desire and your zeal to work in the sector. And it's great to know the kind of, interventions that and innovations that you have been implementing using the technology. You gave us a lot of examples about geoinformatics and how, you have been implementing it in various geographies. Could you tell us that how penetrated is technology in terms of area-wise wherever you have worked, and what challenges do you think are there while such solutions are being implemented?
Thank you so much. Well, I think I should start first, give you a kind of like how long I've been in this one. So actually this year, 2023, it has been 30 years since I started working in the GIS. I graduated in May 1993, probably before many of you have been even born. And then since then, I've been working in this, in the GIS. And at this time, it was just a tool. People thought about GIS as a sort of like a software tool, something like how we use Excel sheet or how we use PowerPoint presentation. But over time, it's graduated to become a sort of like geographic information science and technology. And we'll talk about a discipline, and even the field of GIS has grown right now. I think maybe if you put GPS with GIS, with remote sensing, with stuff like Google Map and things like that, we are talking about trillion worth, like a more near, no, I wouldn't say a trillion, but we are talking about near $1 trillion worth of industry. But also it has a field that has also specializations. And even we have what we call it, the has the hardcore, the people who develop the technology, and then we have the users, and then we have also the soft GISer. And the soft GISer are the people who focus more on privacy issue, on the legal issue of data. So the technology is huge, and there's so many variation in that. But at the essence, GIS is about visualizing data. So anything happen in the world happen in a certain time, and certain location. So putting together time and location and being able to see it, that bring you different insight than seeing in just a table. So give you an example. I always, whenever I teach GIS introduction, I give the classic example, how this concept of geographic thinking or spatial thinking over space is different than traditional thinking. So back in the mid-19th century, there was a cholera outbreak in England, in London, in a place called Soho district. And at this time, people thought that cholera is kind of like, it's contagious by breathing, by mouth or something, So they were avoiding each other, but, and they were taking some sort of what we did in COVID, putting the mask forever at this time, but it didn't actually help eliminate the process. Until this guy, he's a physician, his name is Dr. John Snow. What he did, he took all the places where the cholera outbreak was around and he plotted on a map. And when he plotted on the map, he discovered that most of the deaths from the cholera spaces, the 200 plus deaths, were actually kind of like almost making a circle around a water well. So by looking at the water well, he discovered that basically there was contamination. And then we learned about that cholera actually goes by food, does not go by air transmission, and was able to treat that. But the exercise here, printing this cases, it's called GIS visualization or geo visualization, being able to visualize it. Should it have been kind of like, random across the area, then he wouldn't have been able to. But the fact that he was able to see it cluster around certain space, give you some sort of activity about where, there's something around this place that cause a process that causes this clustering. So this is the power of GIS visualization, being able to connect certain kind of action information over space. So in GIS, we have like three kind of like things. Like this cluster, we call this spatial coincidence, like things happening in a place, and then how connected to each other, we call this connectivity. Like, for example, when you go to Google from one place, unless you have web network, you won't be able to connect from one place to another. And then the third part is what we call it proximity, being close to something or being far from something. So this is so by these three simple things, it's almost like, ABC. You can put them together in different one, repeat them, and, create a very, very sophisticated, projects. So you can actually have pizza delivery, something like precision farming, to being able to manage the logistics like FedEx around the world from one place, to manage aviation in airplanes. So this all are example of application in GIS. Like example are like, are endless actually, because anything that think about it. As soon as you need to use a map for something, then that could be a GIS, could be public health, could be for urban planning, regional planning, and so on. So its importance is basically it is endless. Like most of, for example, think about it now, it is becoming very like, most of the cities now are trying to translate into what we call it smart city, smart city, smart city. And smart city is about smart building that does not, for example, I was in a building earlier this year in New York, and there's no even buttons in the elevator. They basically give you a tag. And once you go to the tag, it already recognizes where you go from one place to another, or a smart environment, or smart water, or smart transportation. Think about what's the infrastructure of this? Maps, digital maps. What's digital maps? GIS. How to think about the digital map, how to structure the digital map, how to design the database that connect to the digital map, and then how to, to build the algorithm on these maps. This is basically what a GIS is. So I kind of like I forgot the actual point of the question here, but this is basically the essence of the technology of GIS and how it can be beneficial for different kind of like people. So the application is endless, really endless. So.
Thank
Did
you
I
so
answer
much.
I got excited about GIS, but I forgot the question.
No, but with each example, there was one way, how it came up, what are the challenges, and all those things that you covered. Since you have been covering from last two questions, it more or less answered the question. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Over to you, Anna.
Thank you so much, Trisha, and thank you, Dr. Tarek. I think it's amazing to see everything that can be done with that type of technology. I think it's really impressive to see how we can advance in different areas. I would now like to hand it over to Alejandra Fragoso, who will be asking the next question.
Thank you, it's honor for me here. Please, I want to ask, what could an e-government look like, and also what risks could be avoided, and how far are we from achieving it?
Well, e-government has been a big thing, and I think we all most of the countries right now implement some form of e-government. From the minute you enter the country and somebody's checking your visa, they are not looking up. See the officer playing on the computer to do something. This is already e-government, so they have the record and it's somewhere stored, and they are checking whether you are requested by the Interpol or you are a legal citizen or whatever. So this e-government is implemented everywhere. But the main thing is just, I think most of the time, the big challenges here is to set priorities for the e-government and also allow sort of like, logical implementation of this one. So sometimes, most of the, for example, a lot of government hear about big data, but they don't really understand what big data means. So, or they hear about cloud and cloud implementation, which everything is now is cloud, and they don't understand cloud implementation in a proper way, that they think, oh, if we put everything in the cloud, somebody will hack it and somebody will gonna steal it away and run away with the data, which is not true. So most of the time, what is really, the challenging with e-government implementation is, having the right, I would say, governmental official who can really understand the potential of the technology and being able to champion for that. And this does not happen in every single place. Most of the time, they just don't embrace it or don't understand what does it mean, or the people on the decision making don't understand the value it is bringing. For me, at the end of the day, e-government is about democracy, about democratization of the data, and providing some sort of decision making for years and years has been done by basically the big, the most big person, the most expert, based on their own experience, based on the their years of experience working on something and seeing different situation, and they do decision making based on that. Well, e-government provide data-driven decision making, and data-driven decision making means that basically, if I think I should go this direction, but the data tell me go to this direction, I believe the data over my own guts and own hunch, and I will follow the data because this is what the patents are saying. And I think that is sometimes in certain countries they don't like that, or some decision makers they don't really do this. So the idea is just getting for the citizens, they adapt to this. Citizen, for example, I know we are in Egypt here for years and years. To pay even your electric bill, you have to go and pay cash. And now everybody's adapting visa to the extent that the country has basically decided that you cannot pay cash. You have to pay through a visa because you would like to control the payment and make sure there's no under the table payment and so on. Well, everybody now has a Visa card now because they pay with a Visa. So people, like usually the citizen adapt to the technology once it's implemented. But the problem is the big decision is how decision making, those big in the government, they really embrace this technology and really select the best for their people rather than the best for them. And this is usually the challenge here. So there has been actually a very nice project. I've been part of it. I'm leading the GIS part of it, but they have a different thing called GovStack. And it is actually led by the International Telecommunication Union of the United Nations. And the idea here is trying to create a single building blocks for different e-government implementation and providing this to different governments so they can choose and mix and match, almost like building small solution for example, how to withdraw money or how to display map on digital map on the screen, or how to record patient information or officer information, and then small pieces, and then each one is all inclusive, and then people can put it together and build whatever application. It's almost like having the Lego do this. So this is a great initiative, and it would facilitate the e-government implementation. But again, the challenge is usually not on the citizen. I think that people adapt quickly to anything that the government imposes. It's more kind of like government, understand really and set their priority, which, to move forward with the government. And the other thing is usually is duplication of the effort. In many countries, I noticed that basically the same solution is done. Like, for example, the one, I'm not sure how this is public, but Malawi, for example, we are doing disaster risk management, which has been done, and in the same time is done on different scales. So it's a sort of duplication of the project, which kind of like, and I think, this is the problem with the duplication of the project here is like, okay, you are doing the same, like, why don't you do it once and for all? The problem is the duplication project time, for example, you have payment, digital payment, and then you have the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Communication, all of them implementing the same solution while it could be implemented at once and serve all the government. So that will save money and also, save investment and save time. So this usually is the challenges with the government to do that.
Sorry. Thank you so much for your language. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tarek. That's so interesting. I think sometimes when I used to hear e-government, I would think of this very futuristic thing, very far off. But as you say, it has different stages, the same as a ladder. It has different steps that we are advancing towards. So it's really, really interesting to hear you answer that great question from Ale. And finally, before we close the conversation, this is such an interesting topic, and I would like to ask you what you would recommend for young leaders who are interested in following a similar career path or getting involved into similar topics.
That's a really good question, actually, and it's very hard to answer because I feel like everybody in the world had their own set of tracks. So you cannot replicate the track. Otherwise, everybody could be Elon Musk, or everybody could be, for example, Jeff Bezos or something. But for me, I when I think about the choices made in career, I usually think there were 5 factors that always, came in play in my career. And I think by age and by time and by experience, kind of like the weight or the important, all the factors are always present, but the weight of each factor has changed. So what are these factors? First of all, doing something I like to do. So basically something I enjoy to do, not force it, so I call this personal interest or personal fit, something I'm enjoying to do rather than force it to do it. The second one is money. So basically, like, I want to make money. So basically I want to make the reward for this, the financial reward that comes, and I'm focused on the financial reward because it's a big determinant when we make decision. The third one, of course, and again, I'm not saying with any order, I'm just saying the different factors. The third one is the working environment. For example, you work with the POP, very nice group, people are relaxed, like it's not like tense, like the worst case scenario. And I have been in places like this. When you go to work, when you wake up in the morning, I said, oh my God, I need to go to work, or I have to meet with this person, and it will be, and then you feel like, so working environment. And then the first one is being able to move around and career ladder, I use the ladder again, but this time I can be promoted. So I know basically now I'm junior. Yes, I'm starting, but I see myself in 5 years, I can be manager, or I can actually go flat. Like, okay, I have different exposure. I work here, but I can also, like, for example, now I work in sales or I work in this climate, but later on I work in advocacy. And then later on I can work today in India, tomorrow I can travel to Mexico. So I know that I can move around. And then the final part, which is also as important as the impact, making an impact. For me personally, the value of all this, has changed over time. So when I graduated, I think, I was single at the time, so money was not really a big deal, but was working with some people I like and doing something I enjoy. So the GIS was something new. And for me, I was very excited about it. I was working with a very nice group. And then later on, I worked with this place in Egyptian cabinet where basically this guy was a military guy. So he was like, do this, do that, and there's no discussion. I always like to discuss and understand what I need to do. And when you have some sort of stupid request from your boss and you don't understand why the heck he wants this and does not make sense to you, and when arguing, you should be able to argue this. You'll be talking about the leadership. But when you have this dictator leadership, do this, I told you do this, let's do it. Be like, that does not make sense. So, that was an environment I couldn't take it more. So I resigned. I went to the private sector. So that was important for me. Later on, when I had a family and I started to have children, money was important, but I was doing my PhD and I wanted to have this. And then as time progressed with myself, and I think I became a little bit financially stable, making an impact became higher weight. So, and this is why I made a bold career back in 2010. I was actually a tenure track in the US and university, and I decided to resign from my university position and open my own company. And then later on, I decided to do the consulting because I wanted to make an impact. So it depends. So for everybody, I think you have to be honest with yourself. I think the ideal to make all 20%, so you have equal weight, for everything, but sometimes you cannot help it. Most of the time you'll find that one thing will have higher weight in you. So be honest with yourself. You want to make money, then you go make money. And then you want to make an impact. So I'm talking to the pop movement. So I thought that basically a lot of you are here to make an impact. So this a priority. Ask yourself, am I making impact? Like, if I'm going to do it anyway, then let's have an impact. Make sure that it has a lasting impact. And what does it mean to have it? How this impact is evident. You know what? It's a very interesting thing. One of the statistics I saw earlier last year, and I think I mentioned this in one of my events, that every dollar you spend in a good cause, social cause, has a sort of $19 worth of social impact. So this is kind of like, so for example, if you spend $1, say for women empowerment, or more women empowerment, there is sort of $19 in reward in terms of women, getting, their equality, access economic market, whatever. So this kind of, the details of the methodology can be explained. But interesting enough, 95% of the projects, they never achieve even a fraction of this one. Basically, most of this time, dollars has zero impact on things, because people, when they implement it, they just follow the routines. They are doing this not really to see actual impact, but just to celebrate. Oh, we did 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have success, and we show off. But in the ground, there is no actual impact. You see, like, there is no change. People go back to the as usual business, to the extent that I know in one country, I cannot mention this country, the guy told me, forget about it, it's useless, because the entire ecosystem is about money. So the donor pretends they are giving donation, the people pretend they are benefiting from the donation, the non-for-profit organization pretending do this, and all because just donation continue, and this is, donor economy, and there is no impact. We have said basically they have been saying that they've been doing this, what the heck, South Sudan. So because he's a guy in South Sudan, I don't have courage. You tell me the country has been doing this, what South Sudan has had independence for what, almost 15 years plus, and it has nothing, because people just, everybody's pretending in there. So I think just, if you really want to make impact, just make impact. Sometimes you feel resistant for this. People are not happy because you kind of like, because if you make impact, you move on to another impact. But if you just think happening, so this kind of like the milking cows continue to be with you. And this is a question, I think that's always ethical question for you. So my advice, remember these 5 things: money, fit, environment, career ladder, and impact, and decide which one matter for you. And if you can balance the 5 of them, you are my hero. Let me know, teach me how to do that. I notice in my life, there will always one value more important than the other. And it depends on like the stage. I'm an old guy, so all the stages, I guess.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tarek. That was a great answer, because I think we rarely get to hear about 5 specific areas to look out for. And I think this will really, really help everyone who listens to this conversation live or who listens to the recording or who's here with us. I think it really leaves us with amazing reflections to take to our daily lives. And I just want to thank you for being here with us today, for taking the time to speak with us and teach us about everything you're doing and all your projects. Really, it's really interesting to have the opportunity to talk to you. And yeah, we hope to continue being in touch for future collaborations and see how the pop movement can continue getting involved in this really interesting topic.
Thank you so much for having me again, and really very interesting questions. And actually, I enjoyed the question. I hope you guys like benefited from any answers I had. You know, the Bob Foundation, Bob movement have been really inspiring for me. And again, I'm always happy to be with you guys here. I love all of you. And I hope to continue to collaborate together. That was amazing. I've been learning a lot from you, Dr. Ash, and from all of you. So thank you for having me today.
On the contrary, thank you really for being here with us today. And we really enjoyed the conversation as well. It was really, really interesting. Thank you so much.